Songland, because personally, as a songwriter myself, I'm immediately hooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm immediately hooked. But I want you to talk a little bit about your first sensations of it and your intrigue and how it began.
Well, I've been a fan of Songland for a long time, since it began, because
Right.
as soon as I saw that there was going to be a show about songwriters, I was like, oh, wow, how are they going to do this? Because songwriting typically is not very interesting to watch. It's a lot of just staring at the wall, right? So I was like, how are they going to hook people in? And so I watched the first couple episodes and I just loved it, because I loved the whole premise of the fact that it a lot of the time gives new writers opportunity,
Right.
but it also shows people the songwriting process in the rewrite, which is a great way of doing it, because you're not coming up with the original idea, but you're tweaking it to make it better, and the audience gets to watch that. And that's a great way to show people how songwriting works. And so I loved it from the get-go, and I was a big fan.
So I love what you're saying, and so I get it straight in my head. You were immediately intrigued by the ability to display or show what songwriters normally can't.
Exactly, yeah, because the process is so cool and so different, you know, when you're coming up with how to put a song together and how to make a song better. And I always wish that I could include people in that, because, you know, there's so very few of us who get to experience what that's like. And then I got to, you know, see on the show how they presented that. And I was like, yeah, it's making me feel the same way that I feel when I'm in the songwriting room and the song is coming together and those jigsaw puzzle pieces are starting to fit. It's
Right.
that same, wow, you know, and I can feel it when I'm watching the show and they're capturing that. So I love that it, you know, it shows the general public what happens and what that's like, and how just the slightest little tweak of perspective or wording can completely change a song and make it hit you in a different way.
Well, you know, that's one of the most beautiful things, that, you know, the person who's performing the song sometimes isn't all the magic behind it. And sometimes, like, you know, you're writing a song, but sometimes you might write a song for a person with their personality in mind, with something that they do in mind. And that's an even more incredible, I think. You know, there's a lot of magicians running around, but then there's wizards. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stars, but then there are light bulbs. Do you know what I mean? And when someone is a songwriter such as you're, obvious, you know, it goes without saying, I think you're an incredible artist and songwriter. Truly, I may make rock and roll, but I love country music. And the fact that you're able to be sought after in such a way speaks volumes. So having already been in the process of songwriting, already having worked with artists on terms that are not as public, you know, normally, so we've talked about the ability to show people what goes on. Well, now once it's being shown, is it the same feeling? Are you able to get past the audience? Is it a bittersweet thing? And how is it different?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was wondering that myself when I went there. I was like, wow, because, you know, the writing process, the brainstorming process that goes with it kind of requires you to get out of your own way and be out of your head and out of your ego. And when you know you're being watched, you know, when you know you're maybe being judged by a bunch of other people, does
Right.
that get in the way? And it's the same thing with, you know, when you're put in a room with a really famous artist or someone that, you know, you're totally blown away by, and your head can get in the way of that. And so I was like, okay, how am I gonna do this? How's this gonna work? But it was really amazing. And I think I have to credit, I really have to credit, I mean, the whole team, the whole Songland team, everyone that was working behind the scenes made it feel so comfortable. They were very aware of how our nerves could get in the way, and they very much tried to make it feel like it's just, you know, just another day in songwriting. And they really respected us, and they talked to us a lot about that. So that felt great. And then when the moment that I walked out and stood in front of, you know, the song wizards to present the song, that was, I felt immediately at home, because the way they talked to me, the way they looked at me, you know, I didn't feel like a contestant that was trying to win something.
Right.
I felt like you know, a songwriter that was equally, you know, respected by them, which was really cool. And so that allowed me to just go through the process. And I mean, we all kind of said to each other when we walked out of that room, we were like, wow, that was really fun. That was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be, just because, you know, it just feels like we're doing our thing, and you're sitting in there with them and they're coming up with their thoughts, you know, right away on the spot. And it's just like a collaboration session right there. It feels the same as it always does. So you kind of forget the level you're doing.
Nail on my head. That's exactly what I wanted to get at. Was it a contestant sensation? And that is something I was hoping to hear wasn't the case. You know, that it was not a contestant, that they were actually creating an environment where the process could take place. And
yeah.
So even though there is a competition in a way, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's a competition element to it. Yeah.
How old is she?
Oh, that was my 4-year-old daughter. So yeah, I'm
Beautiful.
single parenting at home right now. My husband's at work. So
my 20-year-old son just left.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So whenever I see the kids, I'm like, okay, now I really love you. But there is a competition of sorts going on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you know, the audience, the average person doesn't understand that a lot of times as a songwriter, you're writing things and it's not personal if your song doesn't get selected. It's just, you know, what we do is kind of interesting. It can be valuable to one region and mean nothing to another region. And so it's a speculative commodity. And that speculative means sometimes we may not take it personally, but it does matter when you have eyes on you.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like, so you really see, as a fan watching the show, you really see how this process works of pitching a song idea to an artist. The song has to not just be a great song, it has to be the right song for that person at that time. It has to be what they want to say, what they relate to, stylistically what they want. And so there are so many elements to it that often you kind of, as a viewer anyway, I watch the show and I pick, when I hear the 4 songs at the beginning, I pick what would be my favorite. And sometimes that's the one that's eliminated right off the bat. But it's not, often, I mean, they're all great songs. The fact that they got on there in the first place, they're great songs. It's just that the right song for that artist is a different thing, you know, to each artist. So it's an interesting process, and it's the same way with pitching songs from day to day. You know, you hear no 99% of the time, so you just get used to that and you don't take it personally.
Well, you can, you know. I got some great advice once. The people in the music business know barely enough about music to turn on the radio, so expect very little. You know what I mean? And but you know, now that we've discussed this, let's talk about Florida Georgia Line.
Yeah.
What was, transition us into the typical way it is in songwriting, and then how that manifested itself here. Were you able to, you know, obviously the real skill in songwriting is the ability to on the spot be able to assess, trying to get it as close to the right song for the right time. So walk us through a little bit of just the process of beginning to write and get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. So all of us came in with songs that we had already written, which is always the case. So you come in with songs that you've written that seem like they would fit for that artist. And yet you'll see tonight, the variety is really great between the styles of songs that are presented. And Florida Georgia Line is one of those acts that can go a lot of different directions. So a lot of what they will end up choosing depends on where they want to go sonically. That was an interesting process of like being in the room, presenting the song to them, having a conversation about what the song could be. Unless you're writing with the artist specifically for their project, when you're writing it with an artist for a project, you're not typically pitching the song. So this is an interesting combination of like a pitch and a co-write, and you get to actually experience something cool in, like, you see them hear the song, process the song like a pitch, and then you see them start talking about what would make that song right for them, and you know, how to adapt the song to make it right for them. And that's a really cool thing to see, and to see that coming from the horse's mouth. Like, these are the people who are the ones that would be recording it, so they know what they would want from this song. And it's a real challenge too, to kind of put your head in the space of, okay, this is a song that I've been living with the way it is for a while, and how to step out of that and think of it, you know, from their perspective, and think, okay, maybe this doesn't work for them, maybe this other way would.
Would you say that, is it possible this experience provided you some insight into being more into the sensation of being part of the band in a way, in terms of their songwriting? Because this, what you're describing to me, seems to be, you know, very similar to the way, you know, a band, when they go in to sometimes write, the way one will bring the main nugget of the song, they'll toss it to the others, they'll decide, hey, you know, maybe it needs more of this to be more like our band, and as opposed to just, you know, letting them check it out, coming back, and how did it, you know what I mean? Was that the case? And if so, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's like a room full of people all creating at the same time and all being a part of it. And you know, typically in my life, I'm doing co-writes almost every day, but it's usually in combinations of 2 or 3 people.
Right.
And usually each person plays kind of a specific role. Like, it'll be me with the artist and the track builder, producer,
Right.
or, you know, that kind of combination. And so it felt it was really cool, you know, especially being in the room with everyone talking at the same time about what they were thinking. And you have all these wizard songwriters from different angles of songwriting. Right. I mean, they have their niche, their genres that they come from that are very different from each other, so, which is cool to start with. And then you have Florida Georgia Line, which is like a 4th kind.
Right.
So, you know, it all these different influences coming in and talking about what it could be. And that was cool. I just love that. And I love the brainstorming process so much. Like, to me, the best lesson you can learn from that is the best lesson you can learn in life, which is dare to suck. Right? It's like, just dare to suck, put it out. You know, like, you can't, you just have to take risks and speak what you're thinking and brainstorm and dare to suck. And that's what everybody was doing.
I love that. You know, but the Rolling Stones, it said, sucked at being Chuck Berry, but thank God they did. They sucked beautifully at it. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. So I wanted to ask you too, now that, you know, we're describing all these processes and the means by which it's fascinating to have a window for the average person to see into the songwriting craft, but it's also a way for you to be part of the process of being interviewed and speaking in a way that, you know, not normally, the songwriter is not normally included in this element of it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm curious as to, were you expecting that? And now that you're in it, because I have to tell you, it's wonderful to interview you. And I had to do this because as a fan of the show and also as an artist, I wanted to know, like, okay, this stuff seems like it's legit and it better be. Like, I got to know. So I got to get in there. I got to talk to her. So it seems like the situation is put together by people that actually care about the process.
Yes. Yes. And
that was a big concern of mine, you know?
Yes, you can tell right from the beginning that the team cares about the process, and that they think of it as more than it's not just like a reality show that's there for sensationalism, right?
Right.
So they really care about the songwriting process. They care about the songwriters, and they're passionate about sharing that with the world. And we got that sense right away when we got there. So that put me at ease right away, you know. Yeah, it was really fascinating.
You to be a star yourself, darling, and be on this. I mean, that's what I want to get at, because you do it so well. I just want to know, were you ready for it, sweetheart?
Well, it's funny, you know, like, you're always the small print under somebody else's name when you're a songwriter, and that's the best that you can hope for. And there's something kind of cool about being that undiscovered thing, you know. But it's also really cool to shed light on the process. And oh, are you back? Yes, go ahead. Have a piece of gum. So yeah, so And as part of the process of being on the episode, we were interviewed a ton. So, you know, you see the sound bites that they present at the beginning to give background on each person, but it's a really long process of interview after interview, you know, long periods of time of doing that for them to capture those moments that they show for each person. And like any TV, you know, it takes forever to get the one little shot. So being on the other end of that and seeing it, it was kind of wild being in that process and experiencing how uncomfortable that felt at the beginning, and then by the end of the interview how comfortable it felt. Awesome. You know, because it's like when you're doing it for that long and they're asking you all these questions, eventually you just kind of start talking and you forget that the camera's there.
Right. Well, you do it beautifully. I actually that covers everything from beginning. I mean, that I really, I'm just so thrilled with this, and I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, because we love the show, and you especially, you know, you're an absolute delight, and I think you were made for the camera, so remember that. So
thank you, I appreciate that.
You know what I mean? And you write beautiful songs, and
thank you.
I'm glad that we had the moment to talk, and thank you for giving us hope in musical television, darling.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for interviewing me.
Thanks, Maria. Thank you.